right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. But today on the show, we're not doing that. We're doing a list episode today after finally getting through all of the top tens of the year kind of things that we always do at the beginning of each year. It actually is the midway point of a new decade. And so joining me today, we've got Josh Bell from Awesome Movie Year to talk about our favorite movies of the decade so far at the halfway mark. We've got a lot of great movies to get into here. Josh and I, we agree on some movies, but then there's a lot of wide range between our tastes as well. So we get into a lot of different movies here in this conversation. Really fun conversation coming up. So yeah, that's coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. That way you'll find out about all the new episodes as they come out. We got the rest of the decade to cover a lot of movies, so make sure you're subscribed. You can also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod, and don't forget to join my Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where I'm sure we'll get a lot of great input into some people's favorite movies of the decade. But with that said, let's get into our conversation about all of these great movies from the 2020s. All right, Josh Bell is back with us for one more end of the year kind of wrap up episode. And this is something we haven't done yet before, Josh. We always, every year, we do a top 10 midway through the year list. But what we're doing today is a top 10 through the decade list. This sounds like fun, doesn't it, Josh?
Sure. If you think it does, then I think it does.
This is an undertaking for sure.
Yeah. I think the reason we haven't done it before was because midway through the last decade, Piecing It Together didn't exist.
I was just some guy. I liked movies, but I didn't, I didn't have all of this yet.
I feel like that's a good reason to not have done it.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about that when we did our best of the decade last time. That was 2 seasons worth of Piecing It Together, 2 years worth of Piecing It Together. It only happened. So there was a lot of movies to look back at that, we had certainly never discussed as friends and fellow podcasters. But yeah, now we've got all these things that we've already talked about on the show. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I think everything I mention is probably going to be something that we've already talked about. So hopefully it'll be still interesting for us to discuss anew.
I think so. We're all trying to forget 2020 and 2021. So, we're trying to move forward.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah. So anyway, we've got lists of top 10 and we'll get into some other stuff later, but we might as well jump right in. What is your number 10?
Okay. Well, I guess we're jumping right in. So I know we'll get to like honorable mentions at some point down the road. And
Sure.
So this was, I think at the bottom of the list, I was like, oh, was it this or was it this? And as we were getting ready to do this, I know you and I talked about like, oh, we should revisit these movies maybe. And I did not do that. So
I didn't do a single one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of these are movies where I'm like, I saw it a little while ago. And I mean, I know how I felt about it at the time, but has it stuck with me as much? Would I feel as confident about it now or whatever? So anyway, I'm my number 10 is from 2021, Mothering Sunday, from director Eva Husson. And this is a movie that was my number 1 pick on my top 10 list that year, and which like very few other people liked at all. And so that's one thing that makes me think, well, maybe I should revisit it to see if it really holds up, if it's something that I liked as much. And I have not done that. But of those movies that I was maybe a little uncertain on, I decided to put this one at number 10, in part maybe because not many people are as familiar with it or liked it. And just as I wanted to give it another look to see whether I still thought it was good, I feel like maybe people who didn't like it should give it another look to see if they maybe would find something new in it. If nothing else, it does co-star Josh O'Connor, who has become a much bigger star thanks to Challengers, and is very naked in this film, which I think for a lot of people would be a selling point.
Sure.
And it's this sort of dreamlike period drama set in 1924 in this kind of Downton Abbey-ish estate in England. And it stars Odessa Young, who is fantastic as this maid who is in love with Josh O'Connor's character secretly, who is a, aristocrat heir. And it is about, it takes place over the course of this single day, Mothering Sunday, which is the British Mother's Day, but also incorporates these kind of flashbacks and flash forwards that really tell you the tapestry of her entire life. So it has this kind of fuzzy, dreamlike feel that is reminiscent of memories themselves. And it's just really beautifully told. I think the performances are great. It's a lot about survivor's guilt. It takes place in the aftermath of World War I, and Olivia Colman and Colin Firth play the employers of the main character who've lost their son in the war and have not really recovered from that. And there's a lot of that going on, but it really is focused on this main character and her emotional responses to everything. It's, as I mentioned, the nudity. It's very sensual in
Mm.
not a lascivious way, but is certainly sexy as well. So I don't know. This is a movie that I knew nothing about at the time that I first watched it, was just opening that particular week. And I had the screener and I was like, maybe I'll watch this, maybe to do something about it, and was just mesmerized by it. So hopefully I still would be if I watched it again.
Yeah, I remember you talking about this one back when we did that episode, and it's a movie that still I'm not seeing anybody kind of come up with this one, and I'm definitely going to have to check it out one of these days because it sounds interesting by the way you talk about it, and certainly Josh O'Connor is so good in Challengers, so I'd like to see more of his work, and yeah, it's an interesting pick, and we'll see how all of us like it when we finally watch this movie, since no one else did either, so
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, and again, I wonder. I mean, I've had that experience too, of course, where I think something is great because it just strikes me in a particular moment, and then later
yeah,
on.
yeah,
But of those movies, I was thinking, well, which ones do I at least do they continue to come to mind?
yeah.
And I've mentioned this movie, I think, a number of times in reference to other things that have similarities, including the work of Josh O'Connor. So
Sure,
yeah.
sure. Well, for my number 10, so I was kind of thinking to myself, do I really want to include anything from 2024 because of like recency bias, But I decided there was one movie that needed to be on my list, and that is The Substance from last year, which is such a fun, insane movie if you are a gore hound, if you're into all of this kind of over the top crazy effects and into a great story as well. I mean, The Substance is a fantastic story about this woman who takes this very sci-fi thing that makes her grow out an alternate version of herself and then has to kind of split the time with that alternate version or else something very bad is going to happen. That's a rough description for anybody who hasn't seen The Substance yet. But obviously things go very, very badly and things get bloody and disgusting and just really, really fun. But there's also a lot more on its mind as well. Demi Moore is fantastic. Margaret Qualley's fantastic. Everybody in this is great. And it just is so stylish and such a unique vision of what a over the top story like this could kind of be like, and it just tells it with such style and such excitement to it all. The score is fantastic. The look of it is wonderful. And this is one of the most fun times I've had at the movies this decade. And it really secured its spot on my list here. I know you weren't as hot on it, but I'm really excited to check out Revenge, which I still haven't seen, Coralie Farge's other film, and to see what else she does from here on out.
Yeah, I didn't love it, and I think I went into it in part expecting that I would, because it's the kind of thing that I generally really enjoy, and even by the time I saw it, it had got so many great reviews, and I did like Revenge. I had seen that earlier. Um, but I still think it's a great pick. I'm glad to see it getting so much attention. Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley are both excellent. I mean, the look of it, the effects, but also the production design and the cinematography is all fantastic. I felt like it's so long, and that was my main issue, that it is very focused on its particular themes, and I think that's fine, and it doesn't need to be subtle, but at a certain point, it just wore me out.
It keeps hitting
And
it with the hammer over and over again
right,
for you. Yeah.
exactly. And the climax, which has some of the craziest, most amazing effects, I felt like just it didn't have anything left to it. And I was like, when is this going to end? So I was a little disappointed, but it is, and I did like it overall, and I think it's a good pick. And again, glad to see all the attention for the people involved, and I'm also interested in what Coralie Farge. I'm sure she'll have a chance to do,
Oh
given the
yeah.
success of this, whatever she wants. So I'm hoping she makes the best of that
Y-
opportunity.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So let's go on to your number 9.
Well, speaking of Margaret Qualley, my number 9 pick stars Margaret Qualley along with Christopher Abbott. It is Sanctuary,
Mm.
director Zachary Wygon's film from 2022. It is two characters in a hotel room, basically for the entire time, kind of negotiating the terms of their BDSM relationship.
Hmm.
So well acted. I mean, Margaret Qualley is great in The Substance, but I would say if you saw The Substance and thought, wow, Margaret Qualley is great, watch this movie because she is so good in this. And it has a similar kind of, manipulation of sexuality and using her alluring attractiveness to manipulate other characters. But also, what I love is because that's kind of what it seems at first. And it's fascinating in that way and very well acted and very creatively shot, given that it basically just takes place entirely inside this hotel room. But as it goes along, it evolves into this story about these two people who are actually perfectly suited to each other
Sure.
with their specific desires and fetishes or whatever. And I think I brought this movie up maybe just on Letterboxd, when I was talking about Baby Girl recently, which I felt like was a disappointing depiction of that kind of relationship. And this movie
Hmm.
does it so much better. The power dynamic is reversed in that the male character here is the one who's rich and powerful, which I guess is the more expected version. But it doesn't mean that either of them are shortchanged, I think, in terms of character development or in terms of what this relationship means to them.
Sure.
And I just really like, and Baby Girl tries to do this too, the idea of portraying this relationship as like genuine, as something that it's not messed up, or if it is messed up, it is because these people want it to be, or they are both messed up in similar ways. And it can be really rewarding for people if it's approached in the right way. So it's actually a really kind of uplifting romance, but
Sure.
also a fascinating psychosexual thriller along the way with great acting. So Sanctuary.
No, great pick. I agree. They're both fantastic in that movie, and I didn't even think about this when we recently discussed how I wasn't a fan of Baby Girl. But I wonder if part of it is that it was done so much better just a couple years earlier with Sanctuary.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that maybe people who, again, just like with The Substance, of people who watched Baby Girl, whether you liked it or you didn't. I mean, if you were disappointed in it, I think this is a better depiction. But even if you liked Baby Girl, I think this does similar things with a different kind of approach that would be interesting for people who like that movie to check out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will go for my number 9 to 2020, a movie that we covered here on Piecing It Together, The Kid Detective, which would probably have been higher on my list if I had gotten a chance to rewatch it, because this is a movie that I have just been thinking about ever since 2020 when I watched this movie. And I remember being so bummed out that I didn't have any way to see it until early 2021 because there was, no theaters at the time. And it just kind of eventually made its way out to streaming. But so it didn't make my top 10 list at the time, but it definitely would have been towards the top that year. And this is a movie starring Adam Brody, for anyone who hasn't seen it, as a guy who was previously the town's kid detective, and now he's all grown up, and he has to take on his first kind of grown up case, and he's just really not cut out for it. And it's very funny. It's kind of one of these like Shaggy Dog detective movies, just kind of guy who's just not cut out for the case that he's up for. It has one of the best endings of a movie that I've seen all decade long, and it's really, really funny. It is wonderfully acted by Adam Brody. He's so good, and I feel like we're kind of seeing him pop up in more things lately, although he's still just not in enough. And I always love seeing him when he does show up and stuff. But this is just such an interesting, original, and funny movie, and I really love this one. I know you were a big fan as well, and I feel like it's one of the big hidden gems of this decade so far.
Yeah, I liked it. I think we did an episode of piecing
Right.
it together on this.
Yep.
Yeah. And I did like it a lot. It's not, on my list here, but I definitely enjoyed it. And I feel like it as you said, it did weirdly come out like it was one of those movies that because nothing major was being released at a certain period while the theaters were opening back up, it got like a huge wide release in
Right.
theaters at a time when no one was going to theaters.
Yep.
So it did get that. And I think also people have caught up with it more over time. And yeah, I enjoyed this movie a lot. I've liked Adam Brody going all the way back to the OC. I'm a big OC fan, or at least certain seasons of the
Sure.
OC.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed Nobody Wants This, the Netflix show that he's on now, which he's very good on as well, very charming. So absolutely happy to see him do more stuff. And I liked that movie. I was gonna say, I feel like I don't know if it was the same year or the next year, but when also Confess Fletch came out, which
Hmm.
is another great kind of sarcastic, darkly comedic detective movie that unfortunately didn't reach a big audience. And that movie is one that it's like, oh, we should have had so many more of these, and that's based on a series of novels where there are more adventures. And I was going to say,
Sure.
like, the Kid Detective too, we want to see him do more. But you mentioned that ending, and it is so perfect that I'm not sure that I would want to see another case of the Kid Detective. I don't know if it would have the same effect
Sure.
as what we kind of learn about his background and his history through the one case in this movie. So, but yeah, I liked it a lot.
Right on. And I'm glad we got a Confess Fletch mention on this episode because it was really good,
It
actually. So,
was, yeah.
yeah,
It's not on my list, but I think it was
mine
in my
either.
top 10 for that year, though. So we probably discussed it at one point.
Yes, absolutely. Let's go to your number 8.
So my number 8 pick is Sofia Coppola's Priscilla, the biopic about Priscilla Presley from 2023. And I feel like we have gotten this glut of like musician biopics, right? I mean, this year too, we're still at an award season at the moment talking about A Complete Unknown, and people are talking about Better Man, the Robbie Williams film, which I know you liked a lot.
Hmm.
And I'm not a fan generally of these movies. And this Priscilla came out kind of on the heels of Baz Luhrmann's Elvis movie, which, to be fair, I have not seen. But to me, Priscilla first of all, she's not a musician. So
Sure.
it's not the same exact thing. This is a biopic about the character who would be a supporting character in all of those other movies, and was, in fact, I think, a supporting character in Elvis. Although, again, I'm not sure about the timeline. Maybe she wasn't. But either way, it's fascinating. And I feel like it really distills so much of what Sofia Coppola does well into this one film. And it is about, it is about a woman whose entire existence is subsumed by this arrogant, possibly like abusive man who is controlling, at least, if not abusive.
Sure.
And it's beautifully shot. It's ethereal, and Kaylee Spaney is fantastic as Priscilla Presley, and Jacob Elordi is great as Elvis, doing this kind of shithead version of
Yeah.
Elvis, different from, I think, the way we see him in movies where it's about him and how great he is. We have there I don't think there are any Elvis songs, or maybe there's one in this film. We don't really see him perform. It's really just about him as a kind of a dick, but
Yeah.
a very alluring one. And you can see why this young woman is caught up with him, and then you can see how she ends up trapped, and then you can ultimately see how she asserts her own power. So I think it's one of Sofia Coppola's best movies, and I think maybe people were less interested because of that biopic element. I don't know, but I really liked it a lot, and I'm glad to see Kaylee Spaney too, all
Oh, yeah.
getting a higher profile and bigger roles and stuff. So yeah, enjoyed that one very much.
Yeah, absolutely. She's been in so much lately, but yeah, I really liked it too. Not on my list. I remember the big thing for me about this movie was when my wife and I saw it. We went into it after seeing all the buzz about it, and we're like, oh man, this movie's gonna take Elvis down for being with an underage girl, and then really like there were so many issues with that relationship. That was almost low on the totem pole of like the worst things about it. Like he was just a real piece of shit all around. And it's like I just the intention of the movie, it just kind of got mixed up, I think, with everybody's buzz about the movie. I don't know. It was a weird thing. But yeah, it was a weird one, but I did enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it was just reductive in that way, it would be not very interesting.
Yeah.
Like if it was just the takedown in that way. But I think because it does, as you say, it shows how many issues there were, but I
Yeah,
think it also really does effectively show like why it was good or why she would have been drawn in, not just because he was famous, but like
sure.
what about him was so tempting and made her feel good about herself for a while.
Yeah, a lot of interesting layers to it, and yeah, I think definitely Sofia Coppola's best movie in a while, at least.
Yes.
But yeah, I will go for number 8 for a movie that I'm the only person in the world who would have on a top 10 of the decade list, but I love this movie. It's called Francis Ferguson. It's from 2020, technically a 2019 movie, but it didn't actually come out in any meaningful way to watch it until 2020, mid-pandemic. It was just plopped on Amazon Prime. It was my number one movie of 2020, and I rewatched it a couple years ago, and I was still just absolutely dying. It is just this pitch black, dry comedy about this woman who she's played by Kaylee Wellis, who has been in like nothing else. I think she was in like one TV show since this, and then hasn't really acted again. But she basically hates her life and decides the method she's going to start her life over with is to have an affair with a student and let that be the thing that destroys her life. And it's just really fucked up. It's really weird. It's very dry, but if you get on its wavelength, it is so funny. And I've become a big fan of a lot of Bob Byington stuff in the years since this came out. And yeah, it's just one of those things where you're either in or you're out on his kind of style of humor, and I'm just 100% in, and I love this movie so much, and the whole supporting cast is hilarious as well.
Yeah, I'm not in on
I
this.
know
I
you're
think
not. I
I
know.
watched this primarily because you loved it so much and
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
curious to check it out. And I think I've not seen other Bob Byington movies, but I think some of his earlier films might have been at festivals,
yeah.
Cine Vegas, the festival that we used to have here in Vegas, had shown some of his stuff, I think. So I was curious about it and I did not care for it. I was not in the whole. Sometimes a lot of that kind of humor I've just found insufferable. So I know he had another movie since Lousy Carter that got
Yeah.
maybe wider attention, but I never saw it.
Yeah, and it was pretty good. It's not my favorite of his films, but it was still pretty funny, and it was good to see one of his movies get a little more attention than the other ones because they all just go so under the radar. But yeah, again, that's for people who love it, and if not, you're just gonna be like, what the hell is this pick, Dave? But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's
so
good. That I feel like, we could have just had this whole show be about movies that were on every major list and won Oscars, and that's
sure,
boring. So,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Well, what do you got for number 7?
So my number 7 is Ty West's X,
Okay.
the first installment in his trilogy. And I feel like Pearl, the second film, is the one that has probably gotten the most acclaim. And
Hmm.
I like this whole trilogy all the way through. I think it's great. I've liked Ty West for years, and I was really excited when X first came out that it got so much acclaim and so much success because I had loved the Innkeepers and The House of the Devil, which I still think are great and people should check out. And I'm sure more people have been since he's gotten a higher profile. So I enjoy this all the way through. Ty West, Mia Goth, who deserves at least as much credit for
Sure.
how involved she is as the star of these films and as the co-writer of Pearl. But to me, X is the best one because it's not just about her. Pearl is really all about her. And Maxine, the third film, has so many different like bit players that in a way it is also just about her because no one else makes enough of an impression. But
Hmm.
X is really a true ensemble. It's such a wonderful tribute to like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and other films of that type. But it's not just that. I've seen so many movies that are just like pastiches of some retro thing that the filmmakers are nostalgic for. And usually, if that's all you've got, you don't have enough. And this is also like really well acted. It's suspenseful, it's stylish, and it's got the world building. I mean, you don't have to see Pearl and Maxine in order to get that there is a whole wider world of craziness going on related to this film. So, I mean, this is probably, certainly um one of my I would say, yeah, my favorite horror movie of this time period.
Okay.
And I love Ty West. I just, some people were disappointed with Maxine. I thought it was really good, and I'm really excited to see what he does next and what Mia Goth is doing. And I hope they do team up again. So I think this is something that, like, if you're a horror fan, there's so much going on here. But otherwise, it's just a really good, really well made film.
No, for sure. I really liked X and really liked Pearl as well. I did not like Maxine at all, but it doesn't take away from the first two. They're still really fun, and I would like to revisit these sometime. I haven't seen each of them since they first came out, and I really liked both at the time. And yeah, great ensemble cast. Like everybody in there is really good, and it does a great job of being its own thing and being an homage, like you said, to things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and all those like classic horror things that it's kind of pulling from and very obviously pulling from. Like it's totally meant to. And yeah, I think it's really fun, and I can't wait to see what he does next for sure. So
Yeah.
I will go for number 7 to a movie that I almost made my number 1, but I was like, what am I doing? No, it's got to go like right in the middle ish of my list. But it is James Wan's *Malignant*, which is kind of the movie of the decade for me. I mean, it is just so much fun to be a fan of this movie. Let's say that. Now, I will be completely honest and say the first hour of this movie is a total misdirect, aside from the opening right before the credits. That does give you a little tease of what to expect. But then we get about an hour of a standard James Wan kind of haunted house type movie where there's something spooky going on. We don't quite know what. And then we get that shift to where everything just goes total batshit gonzo, and it is so insane and so fun, and it kind of leans into some Giallo influences, but also just some straight up 80s horror and just the total gore stuff. And basically, James Wan just pulls out every trick in the book, everything from visual stuff to camera tricks to music to sound design, everything to make an insane experience. It is it's totally over the top, totally crazy, and for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, you really need to. You need to become part of the fan club along with me. Josh, are you a fan of *Malignant* at all?
No, not at all. I'm
Not
not
even
a
one
fan of
bit.
this one. I'm not a
Yeah.
fan of James Wan. I was just looking, and I don't think I've ever liked any movie that he's made.
Yeah.
So, and I know
Yeah.
he's like a big master of horror right now, and he's done some blockbuster type stuff, but then he keeps coming back to the horror, and people get excited, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really care for him in either mode, to be perfectly honest. But
Eh.
no, I mean, I think at the time I was looking forward to this because even though I hadn't liked his other movies, this was even before it came out, it was like, it's so crazy. And it's like, really just like he's going for it and he's freed up from having done this blockbuster stuff. And I just didn't find it all that crazy. I mean, it has the twist and like, that's cool, but I wasn't interested. And I think if you can't, like you were saying, like the first hour or whatever, if you can't interest me before the twist, then it doesn't matter how cool the twist is. Like I'm bored. I don't care. And I personally didn't really care after the twist either. But it was okay. But I didn't like it any more than like, his Conjuring movies or Insidious movies or whatever.
Yeah, and I can't like really get behind those movies from him. Like they're fine, but they're just simply horror movies with nothing else to them. But when everything opens up in *Malignant*, it's just it's exactly what I want out of movies in general, and it's just the most fun for that second half after that. But yeah, of course not for everybody. And yeah, let's go on to your next pick.
All right. I will say though, as much as I was not really into it, I feel like you should have just put it at number one. Just like own it. I've seen you wearing your *Malignant* t-shirt so many times. Like if you
Oh
love
yeah.
it, love it.
No, I absolutely love my next 6 picks so much.
Okay.
It's hard. They're all over top, I could pick
Yes.
any of these really. So,
Right. No, I get that. And that's good that we have all these movies that we really are enthusiastic about. So
absolutely.
my number 6 pick is Janet Planet from Annie Baker. And this is definitely one of those movies, like I said, where because I didn't have a chance to revisit these, a lot of it was like, well, what sticks with me in my mind more, since I've seen it. And this is one where I really liked it at first. And it creates such an amazing, welcoming, and yet slightly mysterious vibe that I keep coming back to. And it's nostalgic. It takes place in the early 90s. It's a coming of age story about this 11-year-old girl. So obviously there's, a lot of looking back at childhood and how we might view the world when we're children, and specifically how you look at your parent who is your entire world, your planet, if you will,
Sure.
and realizing that they're just a human being and they don't know what's going on any more than you do, and all of that. But it's just so much its own little world. And it takes place in rural Western Massachusetts. And this is an area that I am familiar with. I went to college in this area a little bit later, like a decade later than this. But the sort of pseudo hippie culture that it persisted there into that time, and I think honestly it still persists there, was
Probably.
very familiar to me. And I thought it captured it really well. And the sort of the tension between, like, we're in touch with the earth and we love everyone, and but people who are incredibly narcissistic and can be manipulative and all of that. And I think all about this girl discovering that about not only her mother but about adults, and not in a like disillusioning way, but in a the world is kind of opening up to her way.
Mhm.
So yeah, Julianne Nicholson, very, very good. Always kind of an underrated actor as Janet. And Zoe Ziegler, who is debuting here as her daughter, really, really great performance. And, has to hold the movie together as like an 11-year-old, which I'm sure is really difficult. And so this is a movie certainly that I think about more and more since I've seen it.
Yeah, it was a really good one. I caught it before we did that top 10, and yeah, I think it's a really good pick here and a very interesting movie. Very a weird flow to it, but like it all kind of works really well, and you kind of like get into its world of these people in this strange little community. But yeah, no, it's really good. Also, I'm just realizing, is that three A24s in a row from you, Josh Bell?
Oh, it might be. You know what? I wasn't thinking about that. But
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
because Priscilla was an A24
Yep.
release as well, wasn't
And
it?
X.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Well, shout out to my friend Nicolette Eisenberg, VP of Publicity at A24,
There you go.
who I've
Absolutely.
known for years, and is
Right
always
on.
sending me care packages at award season time. And it's worked.
Very cool. Very cool. I will go number 6. Pretty much the opposite end of the spectrum, but I think both great movies. Top Gun Maverick from 2022. Of course, this is the sequel to the classic Tom Cruise film, which I was never really a fan of.
Yeah, not good. Not a good
Yeah,
movie.
I don't like the first Top Gun, but this movie is just, it's for me, for a lot of people. I'm sure probably not you, Josh, but everything we go to the movies for. It is so much fun, just pure spectacle, pure just like the excitement and adventure of what a movie can possibly be. Tom Cruise is just at the absolute top of his game. I love the meta read of it too about the army. They can only pull off this mission with somebody like Maverick, which of course we can only have success at the box office with someone like Tom Cruise, and it worked. He won. He saved the box office. He saved the world of movies. We're only here right now because of Tom Cruise. You know that, right, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. I thought it was fine, but I feel like I've enjoyed a lot of Tom Cruise
Hmm.
films, and like the early Mission Impossible movies, I think are really fun. We did an awesome movie year episode on Mission Impossible 2, the John Woo film. I feel like the more that Tom Cruise has become like the guy who saves the box office, and even like film snob type people are like, Tom Cruise is the guy, the less I've liked him.
Yeah.
And the less I've like, I mean, as a person, whatever, I don't care. He maybe, whatever. But like the less I've liked his films, because I feel like these films, like the later Mission Impossible films too, especially even probably more so than Top Gun, are built around the idea that like Tom Cruise is the savior of the box office. And if Tom Cruise doesn't do like the craziest blockbuster over the top thing, then this movie isn't worth it. And those Mission Impossible movies are also generally fine, but I feel like they've gotten worse the more that they've leaned into that. And I like the earlier ones a lot more. And I did enjoy this more than the original Top Gun, which I agree with you, not great.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of over Tom Cruise, Messiah of the box office. I'm not into it.
Well, I think also, even if you are not a fan of Tom Cruise, Messiah of the box office, Joseph Kosinski knows how to make some great action sequences.
He does. And weirdly, like, I will go to bat for Oblivion, the previous Joseph Kosinski, Tom Cruise movie that did not save the box office
Sure.
and was generally not that well received, and which I had rewatched not that long ago and wrote an article on, I think is really good. And I feel like that, or like Edge of Tomorrow, these movies where Cruise is a bit off kilter and is
Mhm.
not just like box office savior guy, are better than this or the Mission Impossible ones. I'm really crappy. I really feel like Christopher McQuarrie has been the ruination of the Mission Impossible franchise, which is the opposite of what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, you're missing out on the fun, Josh.
I mean, they're fun, but they're not fun in the way that I want them, and they're less fun as they go along. So it's a side topic, but Top Gun
Mm,
Maverick, sure.
sure. I'll
Yeah,
take it. I'll
that's
take
my
the
feeling
sure.
on it.
Yeah. What do you got for number 5?
So my number 5 is Bertrand Bonello's The Beast, which is a movie that I could not explain. And I think when we did our top 10 of the year recently, I probably said the same thing. Like, I don't understand it. And if you come to me and you saw this movie because I said it was great and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? I would say, like, all right, fair enough. I don't really know what I'm talking about here, but it's fascinatingly constructed in these multiple different timelines with Leah Seydoux, who is really, really good, and George Mackay as different sort of incarnations of these characters in 1910s, I think it is, Paris, and then in 2014, Los Angeles, and then in the far future, in this kind of post-apocalyptic world. And in all these instances, they're sort of drawn to each other mysteriously. So it's kind of this like romance across time, but it's also a commentary on movie making. It's also a really good period piece about an actual event in France when Paris was flooded. It is a commentary about toxic masculinity related to the Elliot Rodger case, another real life thing. Opens with this weird green screen thing where it's very meta about movie making. It's like all this stuff in one, and you think these things don't all go together, and yet somehow they do, and they're held together by this sort of dreamlike feel and the return to the future as Leah Seydoux's character is reflecting on her past lives, and it's just mesmerizing. So it's still, again, something that I think about more.
Yeah, this was one that I really wanted to watch before the end of the year, and I just did not get a chance. And as you know, I was deep in my Ernest marathon last month for
So
Awesome Movie
important.
Year. Yeah, very
So
important
important.
stuff, and now a bunch of Lynch movies. So I just have not had a chance to catch up with it, but I definitely want to, though. It looks really weird and good, so
It
I'm
is.
looking
And if
forward
you've
to
been
it.
if you've been immersed in Lynch, you will really appreciate this film, I think.
Sure, it sounds absolutely along those lines. So yeah, I will go for number 5. You knew he had to show up on my list somewhere. It's my buddy King Kong. I had 2 movies to choose from. I'm going with Godzilla versus Kong from 2021. Adam Wingard's MonsterVerse continuation, where these 2 giant monsters finally get a chance to reconnect. They hadn't done it since, I believe, the 60s, Kong versus Godzilla. But this movie is basically everything I want from these guys, these monsters. It really does it all. It's giant monsters beautifully put together into a world where they get to smash things and smash each other. We have a little bit less human characters than in the previous MonsterVerse movies, which is very good, although there's still too many. We keep trying to get more of them out with each subsequent sequel, but we'll see if we could eventually get to just these 2 guys. But yeah, it was just so much fun, and this movie will forever be kind of tied as well. Obviously, we had the pandemic in 2020 into 2021. I hadn't gotten to go to the movie theater in months and months and months until, a vaccine was available, and somehow it all worked out time-wise for my first movie back to be Godzilla versus Kong. And when I say I had like tears streaming down my face being back in a movie theater and it was to watch Godzilla and Kong smash each other. It was just a wonderful experience. And of course, it's dumb as shit. Like, there's no getting around that, but it is very fun, dumb, and just a blast for me.
Yeah, I don't have any fun with these movies.
I
My
know.
my 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 favorite in this franchise is still the Gareth Edwards Godzilla
Ugh.
from 2014,
Ugh.
where the monster's barely in it, and that's what
Yeah.
I prefer.
Terrible. Terrible.
That's better, and I like Gareth Edwards a lot. Yeah, I'm just, I'm again, I feel like you should go like put both of them on your top 10, just like with
Yeah.
Malignant.
Yeah,
Why
I
not?
I thought
Go
about it
for
for
it.
sure. I'm just picturing like what about like Mothering Sunday, but they're talking about how there's a monster attacking a big city nearby. That could be
See,
fun. Yeah,
yes, I would
yeah,
see that movie. Movies
hmm
like that where it's, again, Garrett, to go back to Gareth Edwards, his first movie, Monsters, where
yeah,
it's like two people talking about the monsters being nearby somewhere, but we barely ever see them because the
yeah,
movie has a low budget.
yeah.
That movie's great. So yeah, these movies, not so much. I just was wondering when you said, your guy was showing up if it was going to be a Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
Oh yeah, no, that I do love the Sonic movies.
I know.
They're
I
very
know.
good, very good. They didn't quite make my top 10, but
What a disappointment.
yeah, I know. You always want them to show up, but yeah.
Yes.
So, all right, number 4. What do you got?
So my number 4, this is one of the only movies on this list that I actually have watched more than once. I ended up watching a second time, just because I was writing about it, not recently really, but enough of like I revisited it to kind of confirm that I really thought it was that good. And it's also, like you were mentioning with one of your picks, a movie that is technically a pre 2020 film, but was released on VOD and I think not in theaters because it was right at the pandemic. And a lot of movies that had been kind of kicking around film festivals for a while suddenly got to be released because there was a real need for movies to be released.
Hmm
So it's Banana Split, starring and co-written by Hannah Marks. And I just absolutely love this film. It is certainly not like revolutionary at all. It is a kind of teen comedy about these two girls who are dating the same guy and played by Hannah Marks and Liana Liberato, and they become friends, and then their friendship is more important to them and more meaningful than their relationship with this kind of doofy guy. And it's just perfectly made in terms of comedy, in terms of character. The performances are great. It's just so upbeat and fun, but it's full of genuine emotion. And I love these kinds of teen movies when they're done well. And it's easy to make bad ones. But I feel like this movie comes from such an honest place. And I love them too when they're celebrations of friendship and not just about romance. And there's romance in here. But like I said, the male character is kind of secondary. And you see, regardless of which of these girls is into him at the moment, that he's probably not worth either of their time. And what's really important is their friendship. And that's something that's going to last like throughout their lives, even after they've totally forgotten about this guy. So I really enjoy this movie. I think Hannah Marks is very talented. I was a little disappointed. She made another film, which she both wrote and directed, after this movie called, it's, hang on. and, it's called Mark, Mary, and Other People, I think is what it's called. And that was a bit disappointing. But otherwise, just so talented and such an enjoyable movie. So it's still kind of an under the radar thing, I think, but it's always, it's on various streaming services. Mark, Mary, and Some Other People is the name of that second film that she made that
Okay.
I'm actually not recommending that one.
Yeah.
But I mean, I loved this so much that I went into that, even though it hadn't gotten very good reviews. I'm like, no, it's going to be good. I'm going to like it. And it was disappointing, but I think she really has a lot of insight about relationships and that kind of stuff. So I still look forward to what she does. She's also a very good actor. So anyway, check out Banana Split.
Yeah, no, I loved it too. It was really good. And it's funny, I was going to ask you if she ever made anything else because I thought she hadn't, but I guess it just went under the radar. But
Yeah,
yeah.
it really did. And it's from, I mean, the date like on Letterboxd is 2021, but another one that I think probably took a little while to come out. And I don't know what she's working on. I think she still has a fairly thriving acting career, and I think she may have done some TV stuff as well. But for me, I'd still, even though I was disappointed with that other movie, like I'd still rush out to see whatever she does next.
Absolutely. Well, I will go for number 4. I had my choice of 2 George Miller movies this decade so far. I put Furiosa in my honorable mentions because I only wanted to have one movie from 2024. So I'm going with 3,000 Years of Longing from 2022, which I think will stand as George Miller's big misunderstood movie, even though Furiosa I also feel is misunderstood. I mean, it's certainly not appreciated in the way it should be, but this strictly misunderstood. I think people just didn't know what to get out of this movie, and maybe some of that is on him, but I watched this movie in the theater just like mind blowing open at just how wonderful this was as a celebration of storytelling. And that's what we that's why we're in the movies, is because we love storytelling, and it's so clear that George Miller feels that super, super hard about how important storytelling is just to being a person. And this movie, I think, really gets into that so well. It's about a woman who basically finds a genie and it grants her three wishes. It's Tilda Swinton is the woman, Idris Elba is the genie. And in the process of not choosing her wishes, the genie ends up telling her all these stories. And the stories and what she really wants all kind of converge, and it's just a wonderful movie. And it's very magical, uh, very just like wondrous, and it really kind of gets into all of these stories. And the stories are told in a very George Miller way, like they could feel almost like extra stories within the world of Mad Max in a way, or vice versa. Mad Max could be stories within the world of 3,000 Years of Longing. But then the woman's story and how she connects with this genie and she kind of falls in love and all of this stuff, like all of that is just as wonderful as the stories within. And so all of it just add up to this just wonderful experience. And I do think this is one of those movies that's going to be just totally reevaluated, years from now, and people are going to say, how the hell did we let this one fail so badly?
Yeah, I still haven't seen it, but I know that you have been advocating for it for a long time. And I was kind of underwhelmed with Furiosa, but overall, I'm pro George Miller, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of lukewarm on all the Mad Max movies, truthfully, and I have not seen the Babe films.
Yeah.
And not really a fan of the Happy Feet films. So this feels like almost, maybe I'm wrong because I haven't seen it, but it's like maybe the midpoint between those like fable like children's films that he's known for, and then the crazy post apocalyptic spectacle of the Mad Max movies. Maybe that's not right, but
It's not completely off base, but I mean, it's certainly its own thing, though. It's very unique and weird, and I mean, people just don't show up for weird and unique movies. So
right. No,
yeah.
I'm curious to see it. I'd like to get to it at some point.
What do you got for number three?
So my number 3 is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, from Kelly Freeman Craig, the adaptation of the classic Judy Blume novel. And this actually is a good pairing, I think, with Janet Planet. It's another coming of age story about a girl who's a little bit older. Abby Ryder Fortson is great in this role as Margaret. And her relationship with her mother. One thing that Kelly Freeman Craig does in this film that I think expands on the book is gives Rachel McAdams this really fully realized part as the mother, and she has her own kind of coming of middle age story. And Rachel McAdams is so good in this film. All the acting is really good, but she is especially a standout here. And as I think partly because we remember her being in these teen movies and now she's
Yeah.
playing the mother, and it's kind of a full circle thing. But it's just a beautiful coming of age story. They keep the setting in the 1970s, which is when the book came out, and it deals with some stuff about religion. It deals with like Jewish identity. And I think it also deals, like Janet Planet, with the idea of realizing that your parents are people who are flawed and don't know what's going on. And while you are trying to figure out what the hell is going on, they might not know either.
Sure.
And it's funny and it's warm and it's just beautiful. So, I mean, I had not read the book. I read some other Judy Blume books when I was a kid, but I know this is a book that meant a lot to a lot of people. And it seems like this really does it justice. I was just happy to see Kelly Freeman Craig finally getting to make another movie after Edge of
Yeah.
17, which I loved and actually did rewatch recently. And I think is great. So hopefully this movie, unfortunately, was also a box office flop. So I don't know how long it'll take for her to get to make another movie, but I hope it's sooner than later.
Yeah, it's crazy that this one didn't connect. Like it just doesn't make any sense because it's so good, and everybody who did see it loved it. So it's weird.
Yeah, but I mean, this is maybe not the kind of thing that people are going to theaters for. I don't know. And I'm not sure if it's found a bigger audience when it's been available to watch at home. I hope that it has. And again, I really hope that Kelly Freeman Craig gets the chance to make another movie. And in the meantime, that people watch this if they haven't.
Yeah, absolutely. My number three is Poor Things from 2023, Yorgos Lanthimos, Emma Stone, of course. And this was a major, I mean, it was kind of the biggest movie of 2023 as far as like people talking, I would say. Everybody was talking about it and, of course, won a lot of awards and it was just this big, weird, wonderful odyssey starring Emma Stone as a kind of Frankenstein-like woman who is discovering the world for the first time. It's beautiful, it's sad, it's hilarious, it's very gross, it's bizarre, and it's just wonderful. It's just so much fun and really funny. And Emma Stone is so hilarious in it, but also the supporting cast, Willem Dafoe was just like born for this role. Mark Ruffalo has never been as funny as he is in this movie. He's just a total piece of shit, and it's just great to watch. Everything about it is great. The score, Yorgos Lanthimos, of course, is kind of an acquired taste, and his stuff ranges from the too weird to the point where it's just off-putting for most people to stuff like this and The Favorite, which is a little bit more palatable but still pretty damn out there. But I think that this is one of his best and certainly one of his easiest to watch because it like I said, it's a lot of fun even if it is weird. But some of the humor in this is just about as dark as you could get, and there's not a lot of movies quite like it tone wise, and it's something really special.
Yeah, I like this a lot too, and I'm mixed on Yorgos Lanthimos, and I think those films, his earlier films that are more in that, like you said, the kind of deliberately off-putting, abrasive, sort of stilted manner, and I think he's been a lot more appealing to me when he's worked with someone else as a writer. And
Sure.
Tony McNamara, I think, is the name of the writer who
Right. Yeah.
wrote both this and The Favorite. And I've liked those a lot more. So yeah, I enjoyed Poor Things a lot. It was very entertaining, and all the things you say about it are true. And I don't know where you're getting later, but this might be the only like conventional like awards favorite movie that we have on our lists here.
You know what? You're right, actually. That's crazy. But and it's such a weird one. But yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, but I did enjoy, I mean, I was happy to see it be, embraced by, the various awards at the time when it came out. So I did not, however, end up seeing Kinds of Kindness, his next film, because it was back to that old mode, I think. And I could tell from afar, like, I don't think I will like this. So I don't know if
Yeah.
you saw that.
I did, and there are parts of it. I mean, it's like vignettes, so like each sequence is so different from one another, and some of them are really great, and some of them I was just kind of like, "What's going on here?" But overall, I liked it, but certainly not as much as Poor Things. But
Right.
yeah, well, let's go to your number two.
So my number two is the only one of these movies that had not been on any of my main top 10 lists from the year. And not because I didn't like it at the time, but because it was in this weird release date limbo that I know is one of your
Sure.
pet peeves.
Oh yeah.
And that at the time that I saw it, I thought it came out that year, but it had gotten a small theatrical release the previous year when I hadn't seen it yet. So it didn't make either of my top tens. But I think I might have mentioned it on our first time watches list. It's Actual People from writer director Kit Zohar, who is also the star of it, and a debut film that she made while she was in college, or I think maybe right after she graduated, but was done, you know, on the campus where she was at NYU, and just an amazing debut. I'm big on mumblecore films. I'm a staunch defender of Joe Swanberg and stuff like that,
Sure.
and this is very much in the tradition of that, but with her own particular point of view as like, a Gen Z woman of color. And it's a coming of age story about this college student, her character who is about to graduate and doesn't know what the hell she's going to do with her life. And I think, as I said at the time that I watched this movie, like in my mid 40s, maybe I should not identify so much with these movies about recent college graduates who don't know what to do with their lives,
Sure.
but I
Yeah.
still do. And I thought it was very, very relatable while being very specific to clearly like personal experiences that she had. And it's amazingly assured for someone in their early 20s as a debut feature. It's very low budget, but it's well acted, it's funny, it's insightful, it's real. I think she's one of the best new talents to come along in a long time. Her second film, This Closeness, was on my top 10 list this past year.
Yeah.
Not as good, but I think also really good and pointing toward like a great future for her. So this is certainly the smallest, I think, film, even more so than like Banana Split that I have on here, but people really should check it
Right on. Yeah, I remember you bringing Kit Zohar up twice now. So yeah, I
out.
mean, clearly a talent to look forward to, and I'm gonna have to check out both of these movies. They are both on my watch list, so I'll get to them eventually.
All right.
Yeah. All right. The other end of the spectrum again. We keep bouncing around, but I got to go to 2023 for John Wick Chapter 4 for my number 2 pick. I know,
Chapter
Josh.
4? When did Chapter 3 come out? Was that in this
It
decade or
was
no?
2019, I think.
Oh,
2018 or
okay.
19.
All
But
right. All
yeah.
right. I guess
Yeah.
if that's fine then, I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah, and they're all amazing. They're all so good. But yeah, this movie is just you don't think that he could keep raising the bar, and he keeps doing it somehow. It's crazy. And like you said, chapter 4. How is a chapter 4 still going to be good? But it really
It's
just
not.
is. It is. It is. It just so is. But it's actually my second favorite after chapter 3. But yeah, if you want bang for your buck, this is like really the series, like because they just keep finding new ways to just fill it with just action and the most insane set pieces and just nonstop, just crazy over the top violence. Obviously, big homages to some of the classic action filmmakers, and they just take it all and just turn it up to 11 in the most ridiculous ways. The stunt work is just insane. They keep bringing in all of these people that are from the movies that they're paying homage to, all these like great martial artists, and it's wonderful to see what they keep doing with it. I know we're about to like expand the universe. We had the TV show and now Ballerina, which is probably not going to be very good, but we'll see. But if it all stopped at 4, just what a wonderful series for action fans. But if it keeps going, sure, why not? We'll keep seeing them. But some of the sequences in this are just things that, as I'm watching them, I'm just like, how the fuck are they doing all this? It's just so crazy. And yeah, it's just so much fun to see just the new ways that they come up with for Keanu Reeves to shoot people in the face and then throw them off buildings.
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel the same way about these movies that I feel about the Mission Impossible movies, which is that they're like going in the wrong direction in the way that people seem to love what they're doing, but to me the first one is the only good one, and I do like
Mhm.
the first one, but it's a simple, straightforward,
Sure.
streamlined action movie that is just Keanu Reeves is mad that they stole his car and his dog, and he's grieving and he's going to kill all these guys. And the more they expand the mythology and bring in all those other characters that you're mentioning and try to, again, similar to Mission Impossible, like we have to make a bigger, crazier, action sequence. Like if we don't do the greatest stunt of all time, then
Yeah.
this isn't worth it. And like, isn't this movie's like 2.5 hours, or no,
Oh,
is it like 3 hours long?
it's so long and every minute of it is so wonderful.
Oh, no, 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 no. So yeah, I can't get behind it. But again, it seems like people, I mean, this one seemed like maybe a point where some people were like, this is too much. But for the most part, people are all in on this. And as you said, we had that TV series and we're going to have Ballerina. And I think, isn't Donnie Yen's character supposed to get his
Yeah.
own spinoff that Donnie Yen is going to direct it? And like, whatever. So did you watch that TV show, The Continental?
I did not. I'm kind of I don't watch any of the TV spin-offs of anything,
It
but
was 3 episodes. I think you could have watched it. It's probably
eh,
shorter than John Wick 4.
that's very possible, honestly. It's a very long movie, and I think I saw it 3 times in the theater.
My God.
Yeah, it's amazing. Anyway, let's go to your number 1.
All right. So my number one, yeah, it's very opposite of John Wick. And this is along with Banana Split. This is one that I actually did watch a second time because I had written an article about it, and it was not number one initially on my top 10 list when it came out, but definitely stayed with me and definitely affected me just as strongly the second time. It's Marcel the Shell with Shoes On.
Oh.
And that is, that's my pick for the best movie of the past 5 years. You would not think that this would be a great movie. And, it's based on these like YouTube web videos or whatever with Jenny Slate doing a silly voice as this little shell with a googly eye or whatever that was probably just made out of things that they had in their house that they could put together for this little YouTube video. But they take this character and they turn it into this like beautiful meditation on the meaning of life and community and family and friendship and so many like deep things, but at the same time it's very funny and it's creative and it's cute. I mean, the integration of the stop motion animation and live action is really, really well done on what I'm sure was not a very large budget. And Isabella Rossellini as the grandmother just gives this really like And I think part of the thing is that everyone involved in this movie is not like, oh, we're in a cute little animated shell movie. Isabella Rossellini is giving as serious a performance as she has ever given as the voice
Hmm.
of Marcel's grandmother. And Jenny Slate is doing this goofy voice, but she is giving all amounts of real emotion and real gravity to this. They get Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes, and she, I mean, just plays herself, but she fully integrates into this world. So, I mean, it's just there's so many wonderful little like Zen koan observations about life. And when I put this on the second time to write about, I was like, man, this is just going to wreck me. And I'm like, crying watching this
Hmm.
film, like trying to take notes on it or whatever, because it's just so beautiful. So, it was a widely acclaimed film, but I think maybe people who are like, what, the Shell movie? I'm not going to watch that. That's not going to be, that's for kids or something. No, don't show it to your kids. Your kids it will devastate them.
Devastated, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I need to rewatch this. I watched it during that like end of the year run up to doing our awards voting, and like it was just mashed in with a bunch of other movies, and I liked it, but I didn't love it, and I feel like I would probably like it a lot more just watching it just randomly one day. It was good. It was good, but I need to definitely revisit it.
Yeah.
My number one is the movie that I've loved the most this decade so far. It's just so damn amazing. It is Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza from 2021. The way I was just kind of like floating to the car after I left the theater, I was just like, this movie is everything that I love about movies, really. It just captures it all. Just the feeling of just being young and just having everything to look forward to, and at the same time just not knowing what the hell you're doing. It's just wonderful, and it's so different from Paul Thomas Anderson's other films, but at the same time it does share some things with a lot of them. It's a really interesting part of his filmography, and I can't wait to see like as we continue forward. He already has so many amazing movies, but I can't wait to see like where it fits in as we get like another decade down the road or whatever. But it's just so damn wonderful to watch. It's just about these two people who strike up a friendship. It's Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman, and they're just kind of going through life. It's just this moment in time in California, and they don't really know what to do with themselves. Cooper Hoffman's just completely struck by Alana Haim, but she just kind of doesn't want to have anything to do with him, but at the same time kind of does, and they don't really know for sure. And they just go through these little kind of moments in their life, and it's just one of those kind of hangout type movies, and a little aimless but totally on purpose, and everything they go through is just so wonderful to watch. It's just filled with just wonderful side characters who are either in one or two scenes, and every one of them is just somebody you wish you could get more time with, but at the same time it's the exact right amount of time. But yeah, I mean, there's just really nothing else I could say about this movie other than just that I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. It's a good. I was waiting for Sonic the Hedgehog or
Yeah,
something.
I know.
So good job. Way to
There you
go.
go.
Good
There you
pick.
go. I got one that Josh liked.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I mean, I think it was in my top 10 probably, or close to it that year. And I'm kind of back and forth on Paul Thomas Anderson, but I like him in this mode the most. I feel
Hmm.
like his big epic stuff, like There Will Be Blood and The Master, those movies don't reach me. But this and like Inherent Vice, I really like. This, might even be, I don't know, I wouldn't say it was necessarily my favorite. I'd have to revisit some others, but I really do like it. I like it a lot for all those reasons that you said. Shout out also to Bradley Cooper as John
Amazing.
Peters, who's so funny, just, really like totally skewering this real guy who is still alive.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, very, very fun movie. Thoroughly enjoy that one.
Right on. Well, you got some honorable mentions you want to just shout out real quick?
Yeah, so I mean, a couple things, like I said at the bottom, at the number 10 with Mothering Sunday, a couple other movies that not no one, but most people did not like, but I liked, but I was sort of like, I should revisit this first. Azazel Jacobs' French Exit, which would probably be the one that
Mm,
I might have put in there.
yeah.
He's gotten a lot of attention with his three daughters recently, which is also really good, but French Exit did not. And it's more of a, yeah, comedy-ish thing. It's got a lot of dry humor and this kind of magical realist tone. And I feel like maybe for a lot of people, those things didn't fit. But to me, it just was perfectly calibrated. Michelle Pfeiffer is so good in it. Lucas Hedges, Tracy Letts. I mean, there's great performances, really fun, weird characters. And it also was released in this midst of this sort of like pandemic chaos and got like thrown out almost.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy that. Another film that from that same time period, Dreamland, from Miles Joris Parafit, the director, with Margot Robbie, who is like a massive star. And it's this period drama about like criminals on the run and doomed romance with her and Finn Cole. And I just thought it was really effective, and really nobody likes this film. And you know, I saw his next film that he made, the director, called The Good Mother with Hilary Swank, that got absolutely just dreadful reviews. And I was like watching that movie the whole time, trying to think like, well, what? There's something good about this. There's something good about this, and it's okay. I feel like it was sort of not as bad as some people made it out to be, but it's not very good.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm like, maybe if I revisited this, I wouldn't be as into it. But I was just mesmerized, and I think like Mothering Sunday, it's one that I would had no expectations for, and I was like, oh, I'll check this movie out, and just was fascinating to me the whole way. So both of those I'd like. Dreamland and French Exit, I'd like to revisit. Taya Chapeau's The Young Wife, which is just from this past year.
Mhm.
Very underrated talent. Her film Sella and the Spades, her first film, also from this decade. And both of these are great. These sort of distinctive, magical, realist visions about one is a teen drama, and The Young Wife is sort of a romantic drama about a wedding day. Great performances, beautiful visuals. That movie especially got completely ignored, and I hope she keeps getting to make movies because it's so good. Eileen from William Oldroyd
Oh yeah.
with I mean, a movie that like got a decent sized push, but I feel like did not get enough credit for its sort of weird twistedness. And Anne Hathaway, weirdly, like Anne Hathaway is like a huge star, but I feel like she's too huge and people discount her abilities, and also because she's known for being like a try hard or whatever.
Oh yeah.
But I love like movies like this where she is like, yeah, you know what? I'm acting my ass off in
Yeah.
this movie and you're going to like it. And I do like it.
I love that movie. I even liked Mother's Instinct from last year. I thought she was great in that.
I haven't seen that, but she's definitely been in a few movies like that where she is just like completely leaning into this like, you know, mega acting performance that she's giving. And a lot of people don't care for the films, but I mean, one, that this would not even be remotely on like a top 10 list, but you know, speaking of pandemic stuff, Lockdown, the COVID lockdown film
Forgot
that
about that.
Doug Liman directed with her and Chiwetel Ejiofor, that just got the worst reviews, that I think is underrated. And she has this giant monologue in that movie that is very meta about like, you think this about me, well, fuck you. And that I think is
Mhm.
brilliant. So it is a side story, but
Yeah.
Eileen, I really like. And finally, Rebel Ridge, the Jeremy Saunier film, which I thankfully people are finally noticing on Netflix. I wish he had gotten a bigger release for it. He's a great talent who we've talked about many times. Great film.
Yeah, I love Rebel Ridge. So damn good. And I expected French Exit to be your number one, by the way. So
You know what? Maybe if I'd had the time to revisit it, I might have bumped it up. But I felt doubtful, and so I went with the
yeah,
movie that I did see again, and I had confirmed my love for, and I
yeah,
think that's fine.
it's good. I like
Yeah,
French Exit. So
yeah.
I will go with Infinity Pool from Brandon
Mm.
Cronenberg. Alexander Skarsgård and Mia Goth are just so damn great in it, and it's so insane. It's just a crazy ass movie, and I love Brandon Cronenberg. He's so damn good. Um, I will also throw the Banshees of Inisherin in there, which was a big Oscar hopeful in a lot of places, but Colin Farrell, Kerry Condon, Barry Keoghan, all fantastic. I love Martin McDonagh, and I think it's a movie that I feel like people love that movie, and yet at the same time, it just almost feels underrated in a way. I don't know. It's a weird one. It kind of occupies a very strange space, but I think it's a wonderful movie. Um, The Matrix Resurrections is, to me, so much better than it had any right to be. The Wachowskis coming up with a very meta and ridiculous kind of way to revisit the Matrix movies. Of course, the bummer thing about that is that apparently they're making another one now, which the whole point was to never make another one. So, that's Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but at the same time, I think Lana Wachowski going into that knows that there's no way that they're going to not make another one.
Sure,
And she's
sure.
able to be like, here's my statement about why when you make another one, it doesn't count.
Yes,
And I do
yes.
kind of appreciate that about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll also throw Feels Good Man on there, the documentary, which is one of the best documentaries I've seen in forever, and is just a horrific look at the internet and everything that's going on, which all has come true in the last few months here, as we've seen. So it's more poignant now than it ever was, really. And then the last one I'll include because it is me and I have to. And it's wonderful and so funny and I love it and nobody else does, but I'm here for it. It's Fool's Paradise,
Oof.
Charlie Day's directorial debut, which, I'll just have to own that one. I know, forget about you not liking it. No one else does either. So I'll just sit here and enjoy it myself.
Well, that's good. I mean, again, I think it's more interesting than if it was just here's what was nominated for Best Picture over the last 5 years. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I like those choices, not that one certainly. And I'm not a fan really of Banshees of Inisherin or anything that Martin McDonagh has done. I feel like he's very, the Emperor's New Clothes-y in terms of the way that people like love his films, and I think they're just so self-satisfied and not nearly as clever as they make themselves out to be. But hey. That's cool.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we're gonna do something here that we haven't really done before. We want to kind of just shine a light on some talent that we weren't like super aware of pre 2020 that has really been impressing us lately. People who maybe they were already doing some smaller things or whatever, but now they're really kind of making a name for themselves in these last 5 years. So, Josh, who do you have for this?
Well, this was a tough one because now you're saying like that we didn't really know, and I was thinking of it more as like that they didn't have the wider knowledge per se.
Well,
So
I think it's fair to say because most of these are going to either have smaller movies or maybe things that just we simply hadn't heard of or that most people hadn't heard of. But like all of these are in the last 5 years, though, really making a major mark.
yeah, okay. So I tried to kind of like come up with this, and I was sort of like hedging what exactly I would say. So I mean, first I'll mention Tyree Chapeau, who actually really fits in those criteria. Like I
Sure.
said, the
Yeah.
only two movies that she's directed were from this time period. Sell in the Spades, I think, played some festivals in 2019 before again being part of that rush of things coming out in the beginning of the pandemic. But she is super, super talented. Of course, I didn't know her about her before. No one really did.
Yeah.
And I wish she has wider recognition. So I already kind of talked about her. Um, Filmmaking wise, I thought of Osgood Perkins,
Mm-hmm.
and I was aware, like not right when his first two films came out, I think a little later, but before this decade, I had seen The Black Coat's Daughter and I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. But for me, really, I mean, Gretel and Hansel
Yeah.
was in 2020. I remember that was one of, I think, the last movies that I saw in a theater before the pandemic, and it was on my top 10 list then. And that was like, hey, these first two movies were good, and this one is really good, and he's a really underappreciated horror talent. And then it took a few years, and then with Long Legs, he hit that wider recognition. And as we're recording this, The Monkey has just come out, which I was a bit mixed on, but certainly he has like a vision and is doing exactly what he wants, and I'm really excited about Keeper, his neck. I think my favorite part of The Monkey was the little
The
teaser
trailer.
for Keeper
Yeah.
that was after the credits that looks more in line with his earlier films. So if he fits there, I don't know, but I thought of Osgood Perkins, who I love. And I think another one, a lot of people saw Long Legs, a lot of people are seeing The Monkey. I hope they go back and watch those early films because I think they're really good too.
Yeah.
So those were filmmakers. And then I thought of a couple actors. And now, as you're talking, I'm like, maybe they don't qualify. Because the first one I thought of was Margot Robbie, who, of course, is like extremely famous.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if that counts, but I think her level of fame, really, of that kind of fame, came about in this decade with Barbie and with her playing Harley Quinn in those various films. and like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and all that
Sure.
stuff, which she's really good in all of those films. Even though, you know, the Suicide Squad and those DC films are of mixed quality. And I just talked about Dreamland, which she's great in, that not a lot of people have seen. I know you're a Babylon guy,
Oh
right?
God, yeah, absolutely, and yeah, but I mean, Babylon rules. But to your point though, of including her, I mean, yeah, she does have stuff that we knew before 2020, but I mean, she's just blown up in these last 5 years.
She has, yeah. And but I was looking and I was like, oh, but I, Tanya was from 2017 and like she got an Oscar, you know, nomination for that. And I just wrote an article recently about Focus from 2015, which was her first lead role, which I think is really good and underrated. So she's been around, but yeah, I mean, I think she's become like this cultural force over the last 5 years. And my other pick is another person we talked about already, multiple films, and maybe that's evidence of it. Is Margaret Qualley, who is in The
Yeah,
Substance, who is in Poor Things, even though she barely does anything in Poor Things.
she's great
Um,
in it though.
and Sanctuary, as I talked about. She's great in Drive Away Dolls, which I think is a super underrated film.
Hmm.
She's in The Nice Guys. She's in Kinds of Kindness. So
Also,
she's
Once
certainly
Upon a Time in Hollywood as
right.
well.
All,
Yeah,
all of these. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is full of these like up and coming female stars in small roles. You know, like Mikey Madison is in
yeah.
it. But yeah, so those were my thoughts on the actor side, and I don't know if they entirely fit what you were looking for, but that's what I came up.
No, I think there's some really interesting picks there. I will just say right off the bat, I had Osgood Perkins as well,
All
and I mean,
right.
obviously, you know, he was around as an actor for a while, also writer, and those first couple of movies being before 2020. But yeah, Gretel and Hansel, I love that movie. We covered that on the show together back when that came out, and yeah, I mean, The Monkey. If you're mixed on it, it's probably my favorite movie of the year so far.
All
So
right.
yeah, I loved it. But yeah, I'm all in on Osgood Perkins. I can't wait to see Keeper and see what else he has in store for us. So yeah, definitely a good pick there. Also, I already mentioned him once during this episode, but Brandon Cronenberg is somebody who Antiviral was out, but since then he's done Possessor, which I know you were a big fan
Oh
of.
yeah. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
like him a lot. I liked Infinity Pool a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Infinity Pool, which I had on my honorable mentions there. But yeah, he's really, really impressing me, and I've loved all three of his movies now, and I really hope he keeps doing just wild, out there stuff and keeping on the family name there. I will go with two others that I wrote down here. Lee Isaac Chung is somebody who I think is really interesting. I know he had a few films before 2020. I actually haven't seen any of those, but Minari and Twisters are so vastly different from one another and both so good in their own right. Minari just being a really great, quiet, introspective kind of film, and Twisters just being a perfect, like Spielbergian blockbuster, over the top, just fun popcorn movie. And I think the fact that he's able to do such a wide range of things is really exciting. And another person, I just can't wait to see what he's going to do next. Although apparently it's an live action adaptation of Your Name, the anime, which I don't know. That sounds,
Yeah,
but
I
yeah,
like that. I like the
yeah,
anime. I thought it
yeah.
was good. And I mean, he's been doing some like Star Wars TV, and I didn't
Yeah.
think Twisters was good. And Minari was fine, but yeah, I'm not
I,
excited about him.
I like both of those movies, but
Yeah.
Star Wars TV, I wouldn't even know that exists unless you bring it up. So
Yeah.
yeah,
But I mean, it seemed like between that and Twisters and what, like an anime remake, it seems like he took the capital from the success of his very personal drama and made the choice, and it's understandable, to go into this big corporate blockbuster world.
yeah, but I love Twisters, so at
All
least it
right.
paid off the first time. We'll see if it pays off again. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I got one more for you. I've got Benny Safdie as an actor. Obviously, we had a few great Safdie brothers films pre 2020, and he was really good in Good Time in his smaller role there. But since 2020, he's been in Pieces of a Woman, Licorice Pizza, Star Wars, the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which you obviously had on your
Yeah, he's
list.
very good in that. Yeah.
Yeah, Oppenheimer and The Curse, the series, which is so damn good. But yeah, there's probably even more that I didn't write down, and he's great in all of these things. And it's a really interesting shift from filmmaker to actor, and I'm always excited to see him pop up in things. I know he's going to be in the next Nolan movie. So yeah, it's just always exciting to see him as an actor now.
Yeah, I'm way more interested in him as an actor than as a filmmaker. I have not cared for the Safdie brothers as filmmakers, and I know they've now broken up, so now we're going to get twice as much Safdie
Yeah.
content because they're each directing their own films, and I'm not enthused about that. But yeah, he's very good in Are You There, God, and he's good in Oppenheimer and all that. I mean, I haven't seen all of that stuff, but what I have seen, I have enjoyed his work in. Yeah.
Right on. Well, yeah, I think some interesting picks there between our breakthrough talent little category there, but also great picks all around. And yeah, we did it. We didn't rewatch anything, but we made that episode happen. So at
We
least there's
did,
that.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there's always. I wish I had time to rewatch every movie that I have ever liked because
Yeah.
that would be nice. But I'm always thinking like, what? But I haven't seen this other movie. What
Yeah.
if I should watch that instead?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hope that they would all hold up, and I encourage people who haven't seen any of these films to watch them.
Well, Josh, I'll see you in 5 years.
Yeah, we'll do the best of the decade, or
Yeah, we'll see what
we'll
happens
we'll
then.
have the best of the half year and the best of the all of
Yeah.
that, and then we're gonna have the best of the century, the best of the half
Ooh.
century.
All right. I'm ready. I'm
It's
ready.
all
Actually,
happening.
we probably will have to do a quarter century at some point. That'll be fun. But
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that's now. That's
that,
now. We
that is
gotta
this year.
shit.
Let's save that for the end of the year.
Okay.
We
I was gonna
definitely got
say
to
let's
rewatch before then. Yeah. So,
let's put pause on this and start that episode right now.
oh God, I'm exhausted. Josh, tell people what's going on with you and Awesome Movie Year.
Well, I think this is actually coming out close to when we are recording it. So, Awesome Movie Year is in the midst of our season on the films of 1941.
Hmm.
Speaking of, I don't know, a decade, a century, a
Yeah,
period of
that was
time.
one of them. Yeah.
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 So I always enjoy when we get to look far back into film history. So that is cool to do. You can get Awesome Movie Year wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us at awesomemovieyear.com, at Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram. Although there's nothing on Instagram there, but we are on
Yeah.
Facebook. And that Instagram will direct you back to the Facebook probably. So
There you go.
that's something. I have some old things at joshbellhateseverything.com. I'm at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky, and on Letterboxd.
Right on. Well, Josh, as always, great having you here, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about our favorite movies of the 2020s so far. Thanks to Josh Bell for joining me on that one, and thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed. You can also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. We also have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from piecing it together, Awesome Movie Year, and from my music career. Lots of great stuff over there on patreon.com/bydavidrosen. You can find out about all this stuff in advance, and I'll be posting some more music stuff there soon. I've been saying that for what feels like half a decade, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen very soon. But anyway, yeah. We appreciate your support by just listening, by sharing the episodes, by writing in or replying whenever we, ask about questions like what were your favorite movies of the decade so far, or asking for puzzle pieces from listeners. All that is great, but you could also support the show by signing up for the Patreon. And yeah, so that does it for today's episode. Time to close this out with a piece of music like I always do. And you know what? I am going to, for today's episode, we're talking about the 2020s, which kicked off for me anyway with my self-titled album, David Rosen, which came out in 2020 on my birthday, actually, on my 40th birthday, October 4th, 2020. I'm going to go with a song from that album. And the question is, what song from that album should I play? I'm going to go with the song called Multiply, which is one of my favorite songs on the album. So yeah, we'll play Multiply to close us out today, and we'll be back with more piecing it together real soon.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.